Hello and welcome to Bud's RPG Review, where I give my thoughts on role-playing games, card games and board games. Today's review is 2007's Children of the Horned Rat, a guide to Skaven for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 2nd edition by Black Industries. Okay, first a bit of history. Children of the Horned Rat is a 128-page hardback book for the now defunct 2nd edition Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay system. It is described as an accessory that includes background, new spells, careers and rules for creating Skaven PCs and NPCs and contains a scenario, Slaves to Destiny. Okay, to the cover. Here we have a decent piece by Andrea Uderzo and Scott Purdy that immediately sets the scene for what to expect from Skaven. On to the inside. First up we have the usual introduction which tells us what to expect. It details the purpose of all 8 chapters, followed by a fairly disturbing story of a human slave in the Skaven capital of Skaven Blight. Chapter 1 is entitled The Skaven Are Real and They Are Among Us. This is a collection of knowledge, encounters and tales about the Skaven, as told by Amelie Mayer, a priestess of Verena. The first part is Legends of the Ratmen, where we get various folk stories about the Skaven. It follows this with some common views on them, followed by a scholar's view. It mentions the 2 great myths about the Skaven. The first is that they don't exist, and the second is that anybody truly believes the first. Following the scholar's view, we have opinions on them from other lands, as far away as Tilia and Hoeth. After that, we have information provided to Amelia Mayer by a dwarf Skaven slayer, Berem Gunderson. This gives information on tracking the Skaven, signs of a Skaven attack and hunting them. Following this, we have a section called Form and Function. This is the bodies of 4 different types of Skaven that have been dissected by a medical practitioner: a normal Skaven clan rat, a black Skaven or storm vermin, a rat ogre and a grey seer. It discusses the differences in physiology as well as some field notes on the things associated with them, such as smell, appearance and weapons and armour. We have information on their diet, breeding and habitat, as well as their psychology, society and religion. Also of note is the information on their technology. After this we have Chronicles of the Skaven. The first part of this tells us a myth of god time. This involves Ulrich and the other gods holding back the forces of chaos, and after the battle was won, rats feeding upon the remains of the demons and minions of chaos, which was how they gained their chaos taint and were created. This second part details a poem called The Doom That Came to Kavzar. This tells of the rise of the Skaven and the formation of their capital, Skaven Blight. Although considered a myth by most, the poem was actually true. Kavzar was a real city occupied above ground by humans and below by dwarfs that was attacked and destroyed by the Skaven. Chapter 2 details Skaven history. Skaven are known to care little for the past. They only think of the future based on when they will take power and the here and now as to how they are currently achieving this. They have no concept of times or dates. It seems to be the acknowledgement by most, however, that the first wave of Skaven presence was that was related in the Doom That Came to Kavzar. In the poem, the humans and dwarves of Kavzar build a tower that's so tall they cannot cap it. A hooded stranger appeared known only as the Shaper and said that they could help them with it. And it is most likely a screaming bell, known to the Skaven as the Great Shrieking Bell, that was hung on the top of the tower, and this called down a rain of warpstone which killed the residents, poisoned the soil and warped the metal and stone. The city itself was twisted into a cyclopean maze, a mockery of its former glory, and thus Skaven Blight was born. The Skaven thrived in Skaven Blight, despite it being beset by disaster, as the Grey Seers planned to dig a great rift in the earth to allow all Skaven to live there. The warpstone-powered machine they created failed and exploded, shattering the city. From the ruins of this disaster rose the Council of 13. The surviving sorcerers formed the Order of the Grey Seers to advise this council. It was at this point that the Skaven started to expand their presence. Clan Eshin established a stronghold in faraway Cathay, while Clan Pestilence journeyed to Lustria. This period is known by the Skaven as the Great Sniff. It was at this time that they went to war with the dwarves. After allying with the Greenskins, they penetrated the great holds of Carrick Varn and Carrick Ungor, and their name was placed in the Book of Grudges. The Evil Alliance continued waging war across the southern mountains, and soon Carrick Azul, Carrick Draz, and Carrick 8 Peaks fell. The war culminated in -380 IC, with the armies converging on the dwarf capital of Karazakarak, but the dwarven defences came in the form of recently mastered gunpowder and cannons turned back the hordes. The chance that the dwarves could have stood another assault was slim, but 2 things happened which swung the war. Clan Pestilence returned to the old world, throwing the Skaven population into chaos, and the dwarves allied with the humans. Together, this allegiance turned back the Greenskins, and a decisive victory was struck at the famous Battle of Blackfire Pass. Another who stood in the Skaven's way was the great necromancer Nagash and his warpstone mines at Cripple Peak. The Skaven fought his undead hordes for almost a century to no avail. The Grey Seers were convinced that even if they were to break through his defences, he was just too powerful for them to defeat, so they hatched a devious plan. They were aware of prisoners that he was holding that would jump at the chance of defeating him, so they forged a blade made from warpstone and gromril that was covered in deadly runes and toxic to the touch. The pommel was a piece of precisely cut warpstone that the Grey Seers could see through and channel spells through. They infiltrated his lair and freed a prince from the south, giving him the blade. He made his way to Nagash's throne room and attacked him. The necromancer defended himself and unleashed magic so powerful that several of the Grey Seers were killed by the backlash. The human, protected by the wards cast by the Grey Seers, survived and proceeded to hack Nagash into 1,000 pieces. Skaven that were waiting rushed in and gathered up Nagash's remains and cast them into warpstone forges, supposedly destroying him forever. The Skaven then swiftly took Nagashazar and the mine and enslaved his empire. The whole enterprise was organised by Clan Rikek. Unfortunately, they had vastly underestimated Nagash, who returned centuries later with an army of undead and wiped out the clan in a single night. Clan Pestilence's return was a turning point for the Skaven. In their exploration of the jungles of Lustria, they had been beset by disease and had come to the conclusion that Pestilence was the true work of the Horned Rat. They learned much from the ancient carvings and foul catacombs of Lustria, sacrificing many of the lizard men they found there to their foul god. Dubbing themselves the Plague Monks, they exhausted the lands and journeyed back to the old world. Upon arriving back, they sent messages to Skaven Blight, announcing their role as the Lords of Decay. The Council of 13 was unimpressed with this, as they didn't feel they needed a new faction to share power with. In a show of strength, Clan Pestilence infected a lesser clan, Clan Merkit, with a virulent plague. The council responded with war that lasted for 400 years. Everything changed, however, on the return of Clan Eshin. Now trained in the martial arts and assassination, they swore allegiance to the council and set about destroying Clan Pestilence. Seeing the problems this would cause, Clan Pestilence requested an audience with the full council in Skaven Blight. The Grey Seers made the council vow not to assassinate the delegates, and Nurglich, the most powerful of the Plague Lords, journeyed to Skaven Blight and offered Clan Pestilence's resources to the council, with the threat that he was carrying a particularly virulent strain of yellow skull fever that he would release upon the council if they didn't agree. Nurglich survived trial by combat, and Clan Pestilence was welcomed into the council. The Skaven then began infiltrating the human cities at the highest levels, spreading disease as they went. This was the cause of the Black Death that spread around the Empire. With humanity weakened, the Ratmen struck, attacking every city and town in the Empire. Within a year, only 3 cities had held out against the Skaven: Altdorf, Talabheim and Middenheim. Fate dealt the Skaven a bad hand as 2 important events happened. In 1116, the Skaven marched upon Sylvania to claim the meteorite that was made of warpstone that had fallen on the town of Mordheim, but they came upon an enemy that posed serious problems: an army of the dead that was both numerous and immune to disease. They had been sent to the border by the necromancer Van Hel, and the ensuing 5-year war exhausted the Skaven troops. The Empire saw its chance to strike a blow against the Ratmen, but were too weak to pursue this option, that is, except for one person. Elected Count von Mandred von Grotkas, the ruler of Middenheim, had held out against the Skaven armies and took his chance to attack. He gathered his forces and rode out against the weakened Skaven, and over the next 5 years they were gradually pushed and driven underground. There they remained for the next 700 years. The next time the Skaven struck was against Bretonia, inflicting the Red Pox against the region. The Skaven sacked Brienne and Maragliano, and then laid siege to Quenelles. However, the Lords of Bretonia were quick to retaliate, and with the aid of the elves of Athel Loren, drove them back underground. The Skaven's underground network spread all across the old world, and an army can travel through these underground passages from Nippon to Bretonia in merely 6 months. Clan Skryre had even perfected a fast warpstone-powered method of transport called warp rail engines that are only awaiting completion of tracks to make them viable. In the 500 years since the fall of Mordheim, the Skaven have only returned to the surface world twice, although their influence is ever present. Indeed, during the Storm of Chaos, Valten, the greatest hero of the Empire, was assassinated by Deathmaster Snitch of Clan Eshin. Following the Storm of Chaos, the humans are weak and the Skaven are strong, and they reside in the shadows waiting for their chance to strike. After this section, we have a timeline of Skaven history with dates from 2000 years before Sigmar founded the Empire up to 2522, the current year, a handy tool for tracking important events that the Skaven have taken part in. The next chapter deals with Skaven society. The first thing it discusses is their temperament. They are everything that the average Empire citizen isn't. They are selfish, violent creatures that value violence and self-advancement above everything else. They never accept blame for their failures, always looking to shift fault to others, and they treat all other Skaven as enemies. A valid point when you consider that all leaders belittle and abuse their peers, and all fellow Skaven would do anything to climb the ladder of power. They're petty, jealous, devious and sly, always looking for a way to benefit from any situation. Their life is motivated by fear. Their life and status can be snatched away in an instant. It then goes on to discuss their feelings towards other races. Dwarfs are first up. As expected, the Skaven hate the dwarfs, as they are probably the best equipped to fight them, but at the same time they also fear them for this very reason. Dwarfs hate the Skaven not only for the war they've waged against them for nearly 1500 years, but also for their abuse of the engineering and technology that the dwarfs hold so dear. The Skaven are scared of elves, as they are the only other race that can match them for speed and stealth. They don't consider halflings to be a threat in any way, as they are too weak to wage war. Indeed, the Skaven consider them nothing more than livestock. The humans are a different matter altogether. The Skaven consider humans to be their greatest obstacle to world domination. Luckily for the Skaven, humans are easily corrupted and often duplicitous and ignorant. As has been discussed previously, the humans have a blinkered view that the Skaven do not exist. The Skaven maintain tenuous alliances with the Greenskins, and Clan Mulder are interested in larger races such as ogres, trolls and giants, but only on a purely academic level. Next, it moves on to Skaven Life. The language all Skaven speak is Queekish, a chittering, hasty speech. Their written language is in pictograms. They're very able to learn other languages, which they mostly do in order to communicate with their slaves. Scent also plays a large role in Skaven society, as Skaven exude different musks depending on how they're feeling, with the most common smells representing fear. This is a survival tool which is used to warn other Skaven that something is wrong. They also produce a musk of battle which signals a rise from their hiding place to war. Skaven are completely hedonistic, using drugs that provide a euphoria, but warpstone is powdered and used as a drug, and when ingested by Skaven magic users, it increases their magical abilities. Warpstone is almost like a currency in the Skaven world, and is their most valued commodity. It then goes on to cover Skaven customs and behaviour. As you would expect, flattery and deference are a cornerstone of their culture. It then details the disturbing practice of Skaven warlords eating the children of opposing clans that they defeat. This is considered a celebratory dinner. It covers marking, the practice of urinating or applying urine to their property, be that slaves, gear or subordinates, in order to show it is theirs, and the importance that body language plays in Skaven society, with nose elevation being used as a measure of respect and deference. It covers Skaven superstition and their fear of predators, how they grind their teeth, which is known as bruxing, and how verbal abuse of minions is customary. Following this, we have the matter of religion, the worship of the Horned Rat. This deity is the supreme god of the Skaven, and no other gods are worshipped. Although considered a chaos power, the Horned Rat is more a distant relative of those powers. The god awaits the day of the great ascendancy, when his children swarm upon the face of the world, bringing entropy and decay. All Skaven offer prayers to the Horned Rat throughout the day, and these prayers are answered often enough to validate this worship. Blood sacrifice is common in daily worship, for the Skaven fear that if their god's appetite is not sated, he will devour his children. The amount sacrificed depends on what the followers need. They sometimes number in the thousands in times of war. The most devout of the Horned Rat's followers are the Grey Seers. These are chosen at birth due to their grey fur and small bony nubs on their head that will eventually grow into twisting horns, a memo that this artist clearly missed. These horns set them apart from their kin. The birth of a Grey Seer is a rare occasion, and they are taken away and raised in seclusion by their own kind. They are trained in sorcery, and all Grey Seers are very accomplished in the magical arts with some terrifying spells. Once they've served their apprenticeship, they administer their religion to the Skaven hordes and provide religious counsel and divination to the Skaven. Like all Skaven, they are hugely obsessed with power, and their connection to the Horned Rat makes them masters of the Under Empire's politics. Indeed, even the merest threat of being dubbed a heretic is enough to quell the most rebellious Skaven. Grey Seers tend to be longer lived than other Skaven, and their supreme leader is the Seer Lord, an enigmatic individual with so much sway it is rumoured that they have a seat on a Council of 13. Next up is Skaven Government. The Skaven are ruled by the Council of 13. This contains 4 seats for the major clans, 7 for the lesser clans, 1 for the Seer Lord, and an empty, largely symbolic seat for the Horned Rat himself, should he choose to attend. There are 3 ways to get a seat on the council. Firstly, by destroying a clan that possesses one. Second, by challenging an active clan for their seat. And thirdly, by filling a vacant position. The council gathers once a month to discuss Skaven matters and vote on actions to take. The seats of the great clans have been held by the same individuals for hundreds of years, with their life being increased artificially with sorcery and warpstone. Next, it discusses the 4 great clans. First up is Clan Eshin. Early in Skaven history, they departed for Cathay and were thought lost. In these lands, they learned the skills of stealth and assassination, and the clan's assassins are rightly feared by all Skaven, as they are incredibly adept at their job. Eshin sells its services to other clans, and are generally shrouded in mystery. Clan Eshin trades in death and information, and serves the council unquestioningly. The clan's basic Skaven are known as Night Runners, and their most powerful are adept assassins. They use their powers to keep lesser clans down, and maintain the power of the 4 great clans. Next up is Clan Mulder. This clan are masters of shaping and moulding flesh and bone, breeding beasts of war for their armies. Often, Clan Mulder Skaven are warped and mutated due to their overexposure to warpstone. 2 of Clan Mulder's biggest achievements are giant rats and the terrifying rat ogres. The twisted creations increase Mulder's standing in the council, and the respect and awe that other clans have for Clan Mulder is genuine. Mulder provides its services to other council members, and maybe, unsurprisingly, they are also adept at the healing arts. The plague-ridden monks of Clan Pestilence are next. These are religious zealots whose bodies are riddled with disease and plague, which increases their resistances to pain, making them capable combatants. Clan Pestilence's core belief is that the Grey Seers have misled the Skaven race, and that the true face of the Horned Rat is Pestilence. Their main objective is to bring all of the Under Empire into their fold and decimate the populations of the Old World. Clan Pestilence's methods are insidious. They can kill regardless of arms or armour. They spread plague through specially bred rats and prisoners that they infect and release. They serve the council with their specially brewed plagues and also their ability to cure plagues and diseases easily. The last of the great clans to be discussed is Clan Skryre. Holding sway in Skaven Blight, Clan Skryre develops their foul technology with abandon. They are the wealthiest and most powerful of the great clans due to their technology being primarily designed for war, although their other technological advances are often overlooked, like the aforementioned warp rail and the Far Squeaker, a device that allows communication over vast distances. Clan Skryre's warlock engineers are constantly researching and designing new technologies, although their experiments are just as likely to fail, often with catastrophic results, than work. The clan supports the council with their technology, and their engineers will often take the technology of another race and adapt and improve upon it. Clan Skryre's main tactic is to utilise its technology in order to make them an invaluable asset during war. The council are well aware of Clan Skryre's value, and the clan never let them forget this. There are other warlord clans that make up the other 7 seats. First up is Clan Phlegm, who are deeply invested in the art of plague, but without the religious bent that Pestilence has. The next is the Upstart clan, Clan Moors. Due to recent victories and expansion, they have gained massive power and influence and are nearly on par with the 4 great clans. The mastermind behind all of this is Warlord Nordwell. His ruthless nature has caused the death of 6 lesser clans, and the rumour is that the 4 great clans live in fear of his reputation. His clan are, in a very unskaven way, united as one, exhibiting a loyalty to their leaders that is unheard of. Their motive is to become one of the great clans, with Nordwell believing that he is the one to lead the Skaven to victory. Moors has yet to prove its value to the council, and the council is unsure on how to test their mettle. Only the Seer Lord has lent his support to the clan, with their unity intriguing him. We have details on Clan Scab, which is said to produce some of the finest warriors in Skaven society, and Clan Scar, who are known for their extensive mining operations, and often work closely with Clan Mulder and Clan Skryre, often pitting them against one another. We have Clan Skull, who are a clan of hedonists and addicts, who only seem to be on the council due to them producing several grey seers within the last 50 years, and Clan Sleekit, who are the boatmen and navigators of the Under Empire, and finally Clan Verms, who are renowned for their affinity with bugs, insects and other vermin. Next up is a chapter on Skaven Settlements. This details the Under Empire of the Skaven, which stretches as far as Araby and Cathay. The Under Empire largely mirrors the surface world, with nearly every single surface city having a corresponding warren nested underneath it. We then have a rough map of the Under Empire, followed by details on how Skaven settlements are put together, including information on their architecture, and then some small details on Skaven communities of note, including Hell Pit, the City of Pillars and Skaven Blight itself. We then have a sample settlement called Under Delbers, which details all of the important landmarks. Following this, we have rules on creating a Skaven warband and custom Skaven clans. The next part details Skaven warfare. This covers the various methods that they use to wage war on their numerous enemies. It includes details on the tactics they use when fighting, how they engender fear in their enemies, how they gather intelligence and spread plague, how they use poison, stealth, harvest slaves and use strength of numbers. Following that are the different types of Skaven, including rat ogres, and we have the first mention of Skaven females, who are kept so apart from society that they don't even speak Queekish, or so the Skaven think. We then have the game rules for tools of war. We have the blowgun, the plague sensor and poison wing globes. It covers the deadly rattling gun, warp fire thrower and warp lock Jezzail. Also included are a few examples of non-war technology, including the Clan Skryre's gas mask. Following that we have Skaven magic. The Skaven have access to 3 laws: warp, plague and stealth, and it frankly contains some horrific spells like Flensing Ruin that does 5 wounds of damage per round regardless of toughness and armour, and Warp Storm which summons a storm of warp lightning. After this we have some proper in-game rules for Warpstone, which is nice to see, and a few Warpstone artefacts. The next section is devoted to Clan Skryre's Technomancy, the blending of sorcery, technology and engineering. It gives rules for creating items from the ground up and the problems that the engineer faces. The next chapter is devoted to the creation of Skaven Characters. It details the various character markers that Skaven usually follow and full game rules on rolling one up. Following that we have Skaven careers, which as you would expect contain many from the basic rulebook, with a smattering of Skaven only careers like Apprentice Grey Seer and Plague Monk. The advanced careers include Censer Bearer, Grey Seer, Gutter Runner, Master Mutator, Master Mulder, Plague Deacon, Plague Priest, Seer Lord and Warlock Engineer. Everything you would expect to see in a sourcebook of this type. We then have a list of new talents associated with Skaven. Following this we have rules for the flesh moulding of Clan Mulder and how they can alter and improve a creature. The next section details how the DM could run a Skaven campaign, but also includes ample information on them as enemies to the players and the general goals that they have. After this we have stats for many of the Under Empire creatures. This includes the stats for giant rats and rat ogres, and also female Skaven or rat mothers. Also included is a horrific creature called Warp Slime, which is born from the excessive use of Warpstone. Lastly, we have a short adventure called Slaves of Destiny. There'll be spoilers from this point on, so stop reading now if you intend to play this. The adventure covers the players journeying to a town called Dottenbach to investigate a lost shipment of wool. Unbeknownst to them, a group of Skaven slaves that have escaped from their servitude have taken up residence near the town. It's a fairly simple affair with the usual array of interesting characters with various motives, and ultimately the players find a human slave amongst the Skaven slaves who tells the players that they are being hunted. The scenario culminates with a battle with a Skaven hunting party. There's a lot to like about Children of the Horned Rat. If you're a fan of Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, then this book is a serious must-have for your collection. It contains all the rules you should ever need for running and using Skaven in your campaign, and it's nicely produced with good artwork throughout, with everything clearly presented. Game stats for Clan Scryer's technology is good to see, and also the definitive set of game rules for Warpstone was a welcome addition. There are, however, a few small issues. I felt like the book repeated itself at times. The section on Skaven psychology was essentially mirrored in the section on playing Skaven, and I felt that they really missed an opportunity by not putting in a section on legendary Skaven. I would have loved to have seen the stats for Thanquol, Deathmaster Snitch, Warlord Nordwell, Lord Sneak, Nurglich and the like. I mean, they're mentioned by name throughout the book, so it isn't like the writers were stepping on the toes of Games Workshop's tabletop line. Even some new interesting personalities for DMs to use would have been nice. Also, I'm still trying to understand why the game stats for the Screaming Bell weren't included, as it is such an important part of their history. Additionally, the Doom Wheel is never mentioned, despite being a mainstay of Skaven armies for many years. These are small gripes though. The book has long passages that are just a superb read. The Great Clans are excellently realised, as is the general nature of the Ratmen. Something that seems useful but probably isn't is the rules for creating Skaven player characters. Evil campaigns tend not to last very long in my experience, and one where you are constantly trying to outdo and undermine one another, while fun for a period, would probably end up an exhausting experience for the DM and the players. Adding them to the roster of playable races seemed much more of a box-ticking exercise than a useful game addition. In conclusion, Children of the Horned Rat is a must-buy if you intend to use Skaven extensively in your campaign, and even if you aren't, it's still a very interesting read. Unfortunately, the hardback is very expensive on the likes of Amazon and eBay, but it is available fairly cheaply as a PDF that I've linked below. I give Children of the Horned Rat a very solid 8.5 out of 10. If you enjoyed this review, please hit the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Also, don't forget to check out my other reviews. But out.